This is a reminder that this episode will address various topics related to mental health, amongst other things. And we'll have a reminder around multiple sclerosis. These may be sensitive to some of our viewers. Viewer discretion, as always, is advised. We remind you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor, or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and/or mental health regime. If you're looking for options to go down with respect to mental health, contact SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, at 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. The service is open 24/7, 365 days a year, and it's a confidential free information service for individuals and family members facing such stressors. Importantly, if you're feeling suicidal crisis or emotional distress and need to be put in touch with a crisis center, call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-TALK. It's 1-800-273-8255. Or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. You can also text the word HOME to 741-741. Those resources are also available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And then something that is really near and dear to me, because I gotta say that I had the most incredible time in media this past weekend. So let's get at this real quickly, in the sense that this has really been paramount in my mind and heart over the last 16 months, and quite frankly, the last 11 years. The National MS Society is a collective of passionate individuals who want to do something about MS now, to move together towards a world free of multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is comprised of unpredictable and often disabling flare-ups of the central nervous system. Such flare-ups disrupt the flow of information within the brain and between the brain and the body. The National MS Society is the largest private funder of MS researchers in the world, investing more than $1 billion to date. MS stops people from moving, but the National MS Society exists to make sure that MS doesn't. To contact the National MS Society, please call 1-800-344-4867. Again, 1-800-344-4867. Or go to their website at nationalmssociety.org. Also, a quick thanks, and a very heartfelt thanks, to everyone last Saturday, this previous Saturday, at the Walk MS 2022 at Ridley Creek State Park in Media, Pennsylvania. You want to talk about a very infectious environment that was full of love and strength and just incredible people. That was an amazing walk. We did a 3-mile walk for an incredible cause in that of the National MS Society, and everybody had an incredible time. And it was just, if you can bottle that up, you have something amazing there. It is just absolutely an incredible organization. And the people associated with the National MS Society, especially those that were in media along with me last Saturday, great people. If you're watching tonight, thank you again for all you've done, and thank you again for an incredible time. We will continue to raise money for this and the National MS Society through Adventure to a Cure's fundraising page at rebrand.ly/Adventure to a Cure. Again, rebrand.ly/Adventure to a Cure. This fundraising effort will last through September 30th. So we have a little bit of time, but when you get a chance, go to that site, figure out more about multiple sclerosis and demyelination, but also, learn more about what we're doing with this, with the Walk MS, because it's an incredible event and incredible people for sure. Thank you for all of you who have donated money to this amazing organization, or have even gone to the National MS Society to learn more about multiple sclerosis and demyelination. It touches me and over to 1 million people in this country who have multiple sclerosis in so many ways, and we appreciate all of you. And on that, let's begin. Tonight, we're going to spend a few minutes talking about talk therapy. We talked about internal family systems a couple weeks back, but I wanted to give a little more time about the topic of therapy, the time we spend in front of a LCW or a psychiatrist or what have you, because that time is important. So the different features of different therapy types, but also what we can get out of it. All of that and your questions tonight, because this is the Venture Forward. Good evening once again, or good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you may be, and welcome to the Venture Forward. I am John Venturini, a recovering addict of alcoholism, overeating, obesity, and compulsive gambling, and it is an honor and pleasure to see you tonight on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, and also again through rebrand.ly/adventure to a cure. We'll keep that stream up there until the end of May, but again, they're allowing us to basically rebroadcast the show up on there. So 5 different places that we are on tonight, and it's a pleasure to see all of you this evening. Talk therapy. We've discussed that before on this show. I think it's really come to light more often with me because there are still so many things in this journey that has changed dramatically. Just as they say, just when you think you have everything figured out, and then this twist happens or that happens. But that in itself is the human experience, isn't it? So the moments that we spend in therapy, the moments of time that we work through it with a therapist or a psychiatrist or who have you, is time very much important. And we'll reestablish that theme throughout tonight's episode for sure. But it has been a godsend for me. It has been very important for me. So we're going to talk about exactly why it is, but then also how it may be important for you too. Let's quickly see who wins the door prize tonight, and that's going to go to Marilyn over on YouTube, who gives us 3 waves and 3 purple hearts, and I give you 3 waves and 3 blue hearts right back at you. I hope you're having a wonderful afternoon there, Marilyn. We have Matt Haas on YouTube using his awesome Wood Things account who says hello. Hello, Matt. Hope you're having a good evening for sure. We got Sammy Superstar over on YouTube who says hello, everyone. Hi, Sammy. Hope you're having a great evening. We got Jaden over on YouTube who says hello. Hello to you. We got Sarah Steele over on YouTube who says hi, JV and all. Hi, Sarah. Hope you're doing well. We got Laura on YouTube who says hello, all. Hi, Laura. Hope you're having a great evening. We also have a couple more comments that I will get in there momentarily. Okay. So before the show started, there were some comments about therapy. Let's talk about that real quick, and then we'll get started with the information I'm going to share tonight. Laura says, therapy is helpful, but I'm finding that I need to put in the work outside therapy for it to help the most. Yes, therapy requires a lot of homework. And when you're definitely in sync with the therapist that you have, you actually ask for more homework. Not because you're, that nerd back in 5th grade that was raising his hand all the time asking for more homework, but you're finding a breakthrough as much as your therapist is finding a breakthrough, and you want to get at it. And you know that some of the best work that you do is outside the office of your therapist, outside of the session. So absolutely, Laura, without question. Marilyn also then says, so true, Laura, you can get all the therapy, but if you don't put the work in, it's no benefit. Therapy without work is dead. I couldn't say it better than yourself. I mean, that is so spot on. So yeah, the homework is very much important. When we talk about things like internal family systems and we're trying to plot the different parts in our parts therapy, yeah, homework is very much an important thing, especially when your therapist brings up the idea of starting to list things off in 3rd person point of view and start saying, so-and-so is doing this, so-and-so is that. That so-and-so, of course, is you, but you're referring to yourself as the self, and then the parts of yourself add up to that. So yes, that is very much an important exercise. I think the latest exercise that I found a really great connection to, which you think, John, you've been journaling and meditating. Yes, I have. But is the exercise of a mindful minute. Just taking 1 minute out at any random point and just get into meditation mode, but then being observant of what is coming to you in that moment of reflection, that moment of mindfulness. Very powerful. Been doing it all this week, and I gotta tell you, I've been putting every single element into my journal as far as what I've been mindful about in these mindful minutes. I was going to say more because there are a couple days this week where it was more than a minute, but very important exercise, and I want to talk more about that in future episodes because the mindful minute is very powerful for sure. So that said, let's go to where we normally go to before we get started, in the sense that we have to talk about language of letting go. And the reason being is that there's a lot of that underpinning to the addictions that we were facing that come out of codependency and co-addiction. So let's go to what Melody has to say. And this actually came from yesterday's entry. The letting go of the need of control. And Melody writes in Codependent No More, the rewards from detachment are great. Serenity, a deep sense of peace, the ability to give and receive love in self-enhancing, energizing ways, and the freedom to find real solutions to our problems, she writes in that book. She goes on to say this, letting go of our need to control can set others and us free. It can set our higher power free to send the best to us. If we weren't trying to control someone or something, what would we be doing differently? What would we do that we're not letting ourselves do now? Where would we go? What would we say? What decisions would we make? What would we ask for? What boundaries would we set? When would we say no or yes? If we weren't trying to control whether a person liked us or his or her reaction to us, what would we do differently? If we weren't trying to control the course of a relationship, what would we do differently? If we weren't trying to control another person's behavior or how we think, feel, speak, and behave differently than we do now, what haven't we been letting ourselves do while hoping that self-denial would influence a certain or particular situation or person? Are there some things we've been doing that we'd stop? How would we treat ourselves differently? Would we let ourselves enjoy life more and feel better right now? Would we stop feeling so bad? Would we treat ourselves better? If we weren't trying to control, what would we do differently? What we need to do is make a list and then do it. Today, I will ask myself what I would be doing differently if I weren't trying to control. When I hear the answer, I will do it. God, help me let go of my need to control. Help me set others and myself free. And that is the language of letting go. I'm going to go back to Maine for a minute. Think about it. If we think about what we used to do in that realm of a very highly codependent sort of platform, highly codependent environment, we would keep on pushing ourselves underneath the rug, pushing ourselves out of the way, and letting other things block us, whether they're people, places, or things. That love has to grow inside of us first. That strength has to grow inside of us first. Then we can give that to anyone and everyone else. But we must not lose sense of that. We have to let go of the need to control. It's important to us. And we have Jamie joining us on YouTube. It says, hello, everyone. Hi, Jamie. Hope you are doing well. We think about things like codependency and co-addiction, and it goes back to the conversations back in a couple of years ago when I was trying to find the right path down this particular way. You know, the conversations that I was having with Stella and Rebecca, the conversations about how do I become a better person? How do I get out of my mindset? How do I take more control over my life? And that's when Stella recommended internal family systems. Now, I know we talked to these sort of things 2-3 weeks ago, but I wanted to rehash that real quickly in the guise of therapy is very much important, but there are things that we have to realize we're doing to ourselves before we can even step into a therapeutic session, whether we're going to an actual physical office or we're doing sessions through Doxy or Zoom or what have you, right? We have to be real with what we are, and we have to come to that conclusion first and foremost. Sort of like the comments before, if we're not doing the homework that comes out of therapy, then what's the point? Well, if we don't realize that there is a situation that we need to take care of upstairs, then how real is this effort, right? It's sort of like what we talk about in the steps as well. If we're trying to battle alcoholism or compulsive gambling or obesity or whatnot, there has to be a yearning to realize that I need to make a change and I'm going to work at it to get better. Therapy is the same thing, but it is very much an important thing to do. So this might be a bit of a repeat, but let's talk about this for a second. I became aware of internal family systems because I was suffering drop. I was feeling out of place. I was feeling removed from my resources. I was feeling just out of sorts. So that drop is that sort of quick downturn after receiving a moment or a set of moments of happiness or fulfillment or what have you. Drop is very much real, but to deal with drop is very much important. So IFS, internal family systems, was very important to me as far as trying to figure that out. Because I travel a lot, it was an ongoing dilemma of the travel, but there was also the temptations of travel, whether it was a sense of overeating or whatnot. If we're going prior to May 30th of 2019, there was plenty of drinking too, now wasn't there? So that was something that I needed to get a better handle on. As far as what I needed to realize, better scenery, better things to do, a better life. Working through the possibilities of the alternative, working through the possibilities of manifesting what I want that to be, and then going down that road. Stella, as I referred to before, referred me to this kind of therapy as it had greatly helped her. She went through the same sort of questions herself, but then she worked through the system, still works through the system as I do too. It's very much important. It's very much necessary for me to do this on a weekly basis without a question. Had a little bit of a question that popped up before we go off to the next question. How did you figure it out? With respect to internal family systems, that was based on Stella. But as far as the need for therapy, that is a very good question. When I lost the weight the second time, back in 2010, 2011, and also dealing with the first demyelination, I needed a place to basically be open and honest. There were things that were going on that was moving fast and furiously around me. There was problems in my relationships. There was problems with relationships in every single realm. And I needed that sort of forum to talk about it in therapy. Now, granted, in 2011, it wasn't IFS. It was more of a generalized cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which we'll talk to in a few minutes. But I got to realize that without it, I would be very much removed from having any chance of figuring it out. That sort of check-in on a regular basis was very much important in me to construct a plan. Now, I will say this. I've been to a series of different therapists over the years, right? There were the therapists I saw in 2011, 2012, one therapist in particular. But then within the last 2 years, I've seen 4 different therapists, and each one had a style that is very much different. But the basic synthesis of all 5 of those have been very important in my journey. A journey that wouldn't be enhanced unless I didn't go for that sort of thing. So I look at it this way. Therapy is important for the mind as much as the PCP that you see is important for your physical health. They run hand in hand. So that's how I basically started to figure it out. But as with everything, Sarah, bring up your question again, just like everything else, it's a work in progress, right? There are forms of my health that I'm still working through, especially when I'm dealing with multiple sclerosis. As much as I'm dealing with, trying to get myself even into a better shape than I have been in now. It's still a work in progress, but I have a place to express that. My triumphs, my fears, all of that. And therapy has definitely helped with respect to that. That's a great question, Sarah. Thank you. we showed this slide back 2.5 weeks ago, but what is the difference between IFS versus CBT? Well, cognitive behavioral therapy is a solution-focused therapy that teaches clients specific techniques to help them address symptoms that are negatively impacting their functioning. So it's basically more of a solution and then working backwards. In comparison to CBT, IFS is much less directive and solution-focused. It goes to the parts of us. It treats every part specifically and trying to figure out how those parts are basically working to ourselves. IFS doesn't make any effort to change a client's thoughts or teach us skills to do so. It treats each part as a very tangible part that should have its full attention. And the combination of the parts make us who we are. And IFS, as we mentioned before, is known as parts therapy. So IFS basically is an integrative approach to individual psychotherapy. It was developed in the 1980s. The mind is made up of relatively discrete subpersonalities, each with its own unique viewpoint and qualities. There are many different pieces to all of us, right? It uses family systems theory to understand how these collections of subpersonalities are organized. So it doesn't treat everything as one giant entity. It treats it individually, knowing that each individual entity forms the self. I'm gonna go back to main for 1 second. I thought I heard something pop and I didn't. Or did I? What was that? Oh, right, sorry. I think I never live streamed before. It's based on basically the basic principles of behavioral and cognitive psychology, right? It's psychotherapy. As we think about talk therapy, another way of calling this is indeed psychotherapy, right? It's a therapy where we are talking to resolve issue, talking to resolve problems. Now, we can use different forms and different methodologies to get through that. It could even be art therapy for all we know, or music therapy. But it does involve talking. It is a psychotherapy. The other thing is that the one key thing about IFS is that there are no bad parts per se. They have firefighters and they have managers and they have exiles, and they are all treated accordingly. There's different prescriptions for how each of those pieces play with respect to ourself. You know, the other thing is when you go down the road of IFS, it could come to light of other psychological disorders that may come. Narcissism is one of them, but other sort of psychological disorders that may come out of those sessions that may not be basically relevant or prevalent, I should say. Some questions. Now I heard the things. Let's see. Can you give a personal example of how your parts make up your system? Yeah, I can. I'll try to keep it 35,000 foot because I could spend hours on this. But there is the professional side of me that is my 9-to-5 self that is very pencil pushing, very much cognitive, very much deep in thought, very much researching. Not from a sense of biobehavioral health, not a sense of what we do on these shows, but more from an information technology, a computer science sort of perspective. Different personality entirely. There is the playful side of me that will be basically looking to find jokes and trying to work on his humor and trying to work on his 5-minute set, which has not seen the light of day anytime soon, but is being worked on, ongoing. And then there is the self of me that is learning more and more about the mind-body experience, but has also worked really hard to try to fix his physical health. This time around, as opposed to 2010, 2011, and as opposed to 2002 to 2004, or 2001 to 2004 rather, he's looking to basically share this because we've all been going through this, and he's seen many people go through this as well, especially in what has gone on in the last 2 years. I know that's a very high sort of 35,000 foot view of what that is. We could talk more in depth on what that looks like as far as how the different parts basically roll up. But those are the three general genres of the parts. Within each of those genres, there are many different parts as well. But very good question, Sarah, and thank you. Matt asks, music theory, is that a thing? And Jamie says, yes, music theory is absolutely a thing, as well as music therapy is very much a thing. Just as much as art therapy is very much a thing. So the next point I wanted to make is, what is cognitive behavioral therapy, right? And we talk about the difference between CBT and IFS, but CBT is goal-oriented approach, right? It's basically on the focus of the pattern of thinking, responding, and behavior that is contributing to one's emotional distress, more as a whole and not as parts. The goal of CBT is to amend thinking pattern behind people's complication and in turn change the way they feel. Various skills and techniques are practiced outside of the session to help reduce symptoms and redirect distorted or negative thinking. This is what we refer to as homework. Not to say that homework doesn't exist in IFS or any other kind of talk therapy, but it's definitely one of the forms of homework within CBT therapy. So again, we go back to the previous comment in the sense that if we don't put the work in, there's no benefit. Therapy without work is dead. Well, when you're doing CBT therapy, you definitely are going to have homework, and you definitely need to put that work in for sure. I got the graphic up there twice. When we talk about other kinds of talk therapy, there is humanistic therapy, and that basically revolves around Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we talk about the 5 different hierarchies of physiological in the base of that pyramid, safety above it, love and belonging above that, esteem above that, and self-actualization at the apex of the pyramid. But each of these sort of levels has its own sort of themes around it. So when we talk about self-actualization, we're talking about morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, lack of prejudice, acceptance of facts. When we go down to esteem, we're talking about self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, the respect by others. So we talk about respect in a two-way sort of perspective. I must have the capability to respect myself in order for me to respect anyone else when I'm fully functioning. When I'm not fully functioning, one or two of those exist, but not both. So to basically get better with esteem is very much important and very much part of that pyramid. In the middle, the love and belonging is that of the family, the friends, and your sexual intimacy. When we start working down to the bottom, your safety, the security of your body, of your employment, so financial security as well, of resources, of morality, of the family, of health, of property. And the base of the pyramid, breathing, food, water, sex, sleep, homeostasis, excretion. So basically your basic vital functions is in the base of that pyramid, but definitely need to be under full sort of understanding. Definitely in full sort of reflection to see what's going on. It's definitely what makes us who we are. You think about it as a revolving sort of cycle. It goes, our behavior drives our thoughts drive our feelings, and our feelings drive our behavior. When we talk about what goes on inside, well, our core beliefs are formed by ourselves, by others, and by our future. All of that work in tandem. When you start working the therapy or going through the therapeutical exercises of CBT, you start to realize whether or not there are impasses in any of those circles. And then there's definitely a lot of work that's done to try to repair that. Again, this is more of an overarching sense of the entire system together and not addressing saying CBT. CBT is a kind of humanistic therapy, but you're trying to look at these things in the sense of the whole self and not just the individual parts. There's your tandem, as I'm losing my voice here. I guess the other thing I would say is that with respect to the experience and the move away from defensiveness is definitely part of this. We want to live each moment to its fullest. And we'll talk more about that in a few moments. But with this sort of level of therapy, we must really understand how complete we are, how fully complete, how full is ourself. If we don't understand that, then we may have a problem. The creator of humanistic, sorry, sorry. I think it's on the next slide, actually. Let me get to it. No, it's not on this slide. This is what I showed. There we go. Carl Rogers. He says, to open one's spirit to what is going on now and discover in the present process whatever structure it appears to have is the foundation of who we are, right? So we talk about exactly what fully functioning people is. I'm jumping a little bit ahead here. Fully functioning people are open to experience. They live each moment in its fullness, right? They increase their trust of self. And I guess when you increase your trust of self, that gives you a better form of what's going on around you. Freedom of choice is very much important. Freedom to be creative is very much important. Reliable and constructive. So you're not just being there, you're present in the moment. That's very key. And then you're doing something like living a rich, full life, which would mean fully capable to experience joy and pain, love and heartbreak, fear and courage with a lot more intensity. In other words, being present. I'm going to Maine for a second. One of the things that I've learned in the last few weeks, as I was going through what the last 2.5, 3 years has been, is part of the reason why I was doing all these sort of bad things to myself, drinking too much, eating too much, gambling, is that I was not living in the present to who I really am. I was basically looking to my firefighters to fill in the gaps. But when I'm living my fullest, richest life, going back to this slide now, I am being present. I'm fully capable to experience joy and pain without throwing things in the way of that. It basically runs part and parcel in all of that, for sure. This was something we showed a couple weeks ago when we were talking about, what do I want? What do we really want? But I think we really need to explore this once more in the sense that to get to know our true needs, we have to be ready to address how we're going to be able to heal getting those needs met. So in some cases, we talk about it in third person. So John needs kindness and honesty. John needs wisdom, fun, and care. Going back to Sarah's question from before, what did that look like? What did the parts needed? Well, each of those parts needed those things in different types, different qualities, different quantities. We need to practice clear, direct communication, and we need to stay on our own side of the fence. And you notice over there, the hierarchy of needs are there as well. Again, very much important. Continuing the thought. Oh, wrong graphic. Did that again, didn't I? We need to perform unconditional self-love because, again, we have to keep that love, strength, and honesty inside of us. We have to let go of the worst case scenario, not thinking that the worst thing's going to happen because, I'm truly a big believer that we can manifest anything. So if we're going to think the worst case scenario, more times than not, we're driving ourselves to the worst case scenario. So we have to let that go. We have to be okay with the unknown, right? So to live all those things, love and heartbreak, to its fullest is being okay with the unknown and living this human experience the best we possibly can. And then being honest with our behavior that may be potentially codependent and realizing when it might be and addressing it right away. It doesn't mean that it's weak. It doesn't mean that we fail. It just means that we're aware. As we said a couple weeks ago, we must observe, not absorb. More times than not, it's easy to absorb things and not observe them. There are a lot of things going on around us for sure. So, a couple of things I wanted to pinpoint in all of this through our discussions about IFS 3 weeks ago, but also, what do we really need? And we kind of combine all this together, and hopefully this basically summarizes it in 4 points. Therapy is important for our mental health as much as seeing the doctor is important for our physical health. We talked about that before. to have someone basically understand what's going on, for us to be open and honest with ourselves, very transparent, is the most important thing we can do. Outside of journaling, which we'll talk about why we journal again in a second, we have to have a form where we can do that, where someone else is acting as a third party or a therapeutic party to get us down to a better place. The setting is there for us to be as open and honest as we can be without hesitation, so we can live the best life we can. A lot of breakthroughs come out of therapy for ourselves, and it's important that we remain open and honest. I think the thing that makes me cringe, and this has come in many conversations in the last, I would say, 3 to 6 months, is, yeah, I go to therapy, but I didn't tell my therapist about this. The thought to myself is, why didn't you? The therapist is trying to construct a complete picture so the therapist can help you. Why would you withhold any of that? So, as open and honest as we can be in that setting is very much important. The purpose of talk therapy is to help people identify issues that cause emotional distress. For some people, these issues are complex and may result in a diagnosis such as depression or anxiety. But rather to get that through really much a very important form to get that understood. If we're not going to go through the exercise and we're just going to guess that, one, that's a miss. Two, it's better to have someone else give us that diagnosis and some validation so we know how to attack that. Winston Churchill said to improve is to change, to be perfect is to change often. I qualify that in the sense that, given that we are living the human experience, I don't believe in perfection per se. But, it's the one thing that I try to get through no matter what. Hang on a second, go back to Maine. Sarah says, shame. That's why people withhold. How do you break through that? Through courage. You have to be courage with yourself. You're going to have to realize that it's going to be very hard to change something that is not serving us properly without really just getting the strength to go through it. Just as much as walking around 5 to 10 feet and needing to sit down is not normal. Just as much as going and drinking every chance he got in social settings and having a bottle of bourbon next to the coffee maker is not normal. Going to gamble every moment he had on the weekends and whatnot is not normal. We have to have enough strength to say, you know what? I can't live like this. My health, in this case, my mental health, but my mental and physical health is at the balance. So it takes strength and guts to do that. Bring up your comment again. She says, shame. That's why people withhold. Yeah. We have to work through our shame. And, shame is a very much unfortunate thing, but we have to be strong enough to realize that there are reasons and things that basically made us feel shameful, which are not legitimate. It starts up here. At the end of the day, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to love ourselves. We have to respect ourselves. And the first thing we need to do is rip ourselves from that shame and try to live the best life we can. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. It matters what we think, what you think for you, what he thinks for him, what she thinks for her. That's what matters. But to have shame and not do these things is sad, is very much sad. I'm going to reprise something we talked about a month ago in that why we journal. To strengthen our emotional function, to reduce our stress. One would argue it would make our immune function better. It allows us to keep a sharp memory. It's a mood booster. I will say that in days where I'm feeling MS days, which is very much an important realization for me, but very much a thing I need to keep realization of, I have to use my journal to keep memory of things as well. Like I said before, there are good days and there are bad days. Neurologically, physically, mentally. But the best thing I can do is journal. Best thing I can do is hop into day one and take notes and talk about how I really feel, even if the only person that's seeing it is me. So that's why we journal. As far as a mood booster, it definitely is. When you get your feelings out on paper, it definitely can boost your mood, for sure. Especially when you're talking about a good memory or that of a bad memory. To at least put words around it is the best possible thing you could do. So it's definitely something you can say about that. Our emotional function being strengthened, absolutely. Again, we can put a feeling around it. We can put words around it. We know what that thing is. Some days I will journal 5 or 6 times a day. There's definitely times I journal after the mindful minute. That definitely strengthens my function emotionally. So when you put all that together, that's why we journal. What should I journal? Well, one thing that's missing in this list is the mindful minute. Being aware of what has transpired when you're just being free and just taking nothing more than just sitting cross-legged and just letting your mind be free for a second. Meditate. It's a brain drain when you're not doing it in that sort of form, but it gives you a chance to get your thoughts out. And when you're meditating and random thoughts appear from all which direction, it gives you a chance to put that on paper. The only way you know is by writing in your journal. Because again, it's a memory booster, especially when we don't necessarily have the memory of things from time to time. We have it in a place. We put it down after we journal. It's there. It's not a set format. It's not a set tone. No one's asking you to write this in double-spaced form, 200 words or less. It is your journal. You write it whichever way you want to write it. You want to draw a picture, that's how you journal, you do it that way. You want to write it in poetry, you could do it that way too. Whatever you want. If it's a question of you see a certain picture and you want to put a caption around it and you put your feelings around it, that's absolutely fair game for it as well. Nothing should ever be off limits. As euphoric or as traumatic as the experience may be, we should journal about it. Anything is fair game. Writing can be the practice that gets us closer to healing. That was from a New York Times article about a year ago. What's all this about journaling? What's all of this about journaling is the name of the article. So we talk about all this, and then we'll go back to Maine for a second. There was a homework assignment in More Language of Letting Go, which is basically the sequel book to Language of Letting Go that we quote from on this show on a regular basis, that I wanted to share with all of you. And if you want to take part in the homework assignment, I have my email address on the next slide. We could talk about that. But if you think about it, and you think about connection, it's very much a real thing in the sense that we must take an accountability and an inventory of who we are. And it's not necessarily a 12-step thing. It's just a living thing for us to realize where we are. And it's also a good journaling exercise, if you ask me. Taking inventory of who we are, where we are, what we are, all of that. So let's talk about the homework assignment. If you have a spouse or a roommate, or for that matter, a best friend or a dear loved one, anyone, quite frankly, making a regular ritual out of doing a debriefing together can be a great intimacy building activity. You can encourage your children to learn to debrief from the day at a young age, or you can debrief with a friend on the phone or online at the end of the day. You'll not only get to know yourself better, but you'll also become closer to the person too. And if you think about it, if you're basically coming up with an inventory of what's going on, an inventory of how the day was, the wins and the not so wins and the things that need to be done, and you can share that, well, that's communication not only for the other person, but that's communication for you. So it's definitely something that would be interesting to see some of us take that up. And let me know how that goes for you. My email address is on there, theventureforward@gmail.com. Let me know how that homework assignment is going for you. One of the things that go in my journal, and as I share from time to time, is poetry. And I wanted to share a poem that I wrote before we did Lita back in August of 20. This was back in July 8th of 2020. This is called Grateful for This Family. Grateful for another day. Grateful for another way. In anything that comes today, I know how to stay safe and sane through any fray. Some days up, some days down. No matter wearing a big grin or wearing a deep frown, I love all of you. All of this family, old and new, and I would not let this moment go without saying something you already know. For my wishes for you to stay safe, stay sane, and stay strong, and stay sober as we continue to grow. So that tagline at the end of the show, I've been saying it for a while, but you could tell it comes from my poem. And at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want to stay safe. We want to stay sane. We want to stay strong. We want to stay sober. Because our lives very much are contingent in all of that. Jamie says, grateful for you. I'm grateful for you too, Jamie, without question. Got a surprise for you for next week. And I was thinking about doing this for a long time, but we're going to do it next week. We're going to talk about challenges. It's so much part of social media these days with, you talk about TikTok and other things about doing challenges. We're going to talk about the challenges on Tuesday that led me down this road and the challenges that help solidify where I'm going, mentally and physically. So Tuesday, I'm going to talk about the challenges I've basically undertaken to become better, to get to a better place. I'm also going to talk about the challenges I'm taking part in and the challenges that I'm looking to achieve through the rest of 2022. That's Tuesday. Thursday, I'm going to shift the homework assignment on you. And we're going to talk about a challenge I want to do together as a community throughout the summer. And we'll talk about the details of that on the Thursday episode. Maybe pre-recorded, maybe live. We will find out. Tuesday's definitely live for sure. And then, as we do on Fridays, we'll do VF Talks, as always. A conversation about anything and everything with Matt Haas, Paul Burke, and all of you. So, your lineup. Fridays, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific. The Tuesday and Thursday episode about the challenges next week will be at 8 Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. As I mentioned before, the Thursday episode may be pre-recorded, but we're definitely going to talk about the challenge I have for this community come this summer. As Sarah says, Lita, we might be doing a Lita in here, but this is a different kind of challenge. If you want to do it live every day on some sort of streaming platform, by all means. But we'll talk about the actual details of the challenge 1 week from today. So again, the challenges I've gone through to get to a better place, that'll be Tuesday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. The challenge for you, Thursday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific, and then VF Talks, as always, 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific on Fridays. It's a mouthful, but it's definitely going to be an interesting week next week for sure. But until next time, I'm going to say the same thing I say to you at the end of every Venture Forward and every VF Talks. Stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. We'll see you tomorrow night for VF Talks at 6:30 Eastern, 3:30 Pacific, right here on the Venture Forward. Have a wonderful night. I love you all, and fly, be free.